Hola Focalinos. We wanted to bring in 2023 with the music makers, the music creators, the music curators. So, first week we had the Heartbreak Monday crew. Last week we had DJ Señorita, and this week we have a two-parter. Our first two-parter, please believe it. We have the amazing Garth Trinidad. We have part one right now, and then next week we'll be dropping part two. His episode that dropped back in December 2021 was almost 2 hours. We released it all in one shot, but this time around we're going to break it up. So here we go, part one. Hola. Welcome to episode 56 of Word to Your Mama. Today we have the legend, Garth Trinidad, aka Señor Trinidad. I asked him what he wanted his title to be, because he's starting a new chapter in his life, kids. And his title now is he's a Pisces and an Angelino. So this episode is about his origins and kind of the deconstruction of Garth Trinidad and him starting new chapters. You guys probably know him from KCRW, producer and curator of some of the most legendary events here in LA and around the world, as music supervisor for Entourage. But in March of this year, this is 2021, we're at the end of 2021, still year 2 of pandemic, if you will. March of this year, after 27 years at KCRW, he left and he's starting this new chapter. And before you'd say, oh, Garth Trinidad, oh yeah, DJ, curator, but he's more than that, kids. And that's what we find out in this episode. It was an honor and a pleasure to reconnect with an old friend that, as you hear from our conversation, the first time we met, it was like when I was one of my first jobs interning in the music industry, and he just opened arms and we felt like a kindred spirit, a kindred connection. It's great to hear the work that he's been doing, where he's at mentally, in his heart. And we talk about all that good stuff. We talk about staying safe in the pandemic, making those hard decisions about, unfortunately having to break promises because these are very unique times, right? You got to feel safe. About ending lifelong relationships because, your work, what you've been doing for a long time, what you put your heart and soul in, that's a relationship, and all the major transitions he's going through. We talk about things like past life regressions, his earliest music memory, how he actually graduated, got his degree in illustration from Otis, and how during that time, that's when he started DJing at KCRW, and how during that moment in his life, music won over art, but now the rest is coming together. His time as a music supervisor at Entourage, and how, consultant versus music supervisor is a thing. Being a consultant is going to win every time because of all the things that really actually go into being a music supervisor. And, trying to move back into, he's on the cusp of going back into that visual art world, being a writer, telling us his stories, and everything else is on the horizon. So let's get into it.
But I can't really tell because my picture's so small. Does that look cool?
Yeah, you look fine. Yeah.
You don't see my dirty laundry in the background?
No, not at all. It looks clean and pristine.
Just to the side.
Garth, how are you, man? I haven't seen you in forever.
I'm doing all right. I mean, I'm like, look, to be number one alive, number 2, in good health. And number 3, to know that to have, friends and loved ones around me, like healthy, like my kids are in good health. And, even my parents, they're doing all right. Like, I mean, they're elderly, so they have their issues and whatnot. But I'm just happy to be like in good health with like a pandemic still upon us. I mean, I'm gonna just be honest. Like, this is like whooping a lot of people's ass, and mentally and emotionally. And I pray for good health. Vigilant about my health. I try to be, I don't know. For me, it's like, I don't take it lightly.
Yeah.
And I even had, booked a night with, Azul, who's basically like booking and running grand performances.
Yeah.
And he had a huge responsibility for the summer because it was like his first time, and he basically was just hired on, and he was the guy that was going to reintroduce the new grand performances as things started to open up. And I wanted to do like a really small boutique show, excuse me. And it's just something going down my throat the wrong way. It ain't nothing serious.
Oh, not stressed. We're not stressed. It's like you gotta give a little.
But like as the time progressed over the summer, because we had like a late summer booking, it was like late August. I was like, yo, like people are coming out in droves for these shows. I'm like, I asked them, like, I want to still keep mine like super small, just keeping in mind my goal and the idea that it's still a pandemic and it's cool, everybody coming out, but I kind of like don't want to promote mine and maybe just have like 50 people socially distanced, in the little amphitheater. And the game had changed by then. Like, he's like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, we just have to keep the ball rolling. And I'm like, man, I can't do the show. I gotta pull out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta.
Yeah. Exactly. You got to do what you had to do for you and for your family, because these are the times. These are the times. I shout out to Azul, and I definitely want to reach out to him and talk to him and hear his story too. And I saw a lot of my friends, go to the grand performances. It was an amazing lineup, but
it was amazing.
But
Azul, the perfect guy for that. You know what I mean? Like,
perfect.
that's his frequency right there. So I knew he was going to kill it. But what I underestimated was, and I shouldn't have, it should have been a safe assumption that people were just like ready to, come out and just be around each other. And I'm just not there yet. I'm just like, I got teenagers. I got like, I got kids that are going to school out of state and out of the country right now. So like, I'm on them. I'm like, yo, stay vigilant, like be safe. Just practice the little things. Like, don't stop. Wash your hands all day long. Don't touch your face. Like, don't be around too many big crowds. Like, be careful. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's hard, and it's so hard for kids. I mean, you have a son, and I feel like kids probably got it the hardest. You know what I mean? Like, little kids, big kid, all kids. Like,
because it's hard for adults. It's hard for adults. So to let alone, a teenage brain. A young child's brain, they're just supposed to be out in the world, and they're supposed to learn by being out in the world. And then when that's taken away from you, I mean, I give it up to these kids. It's like they roll with it, they deal with it. But as an adult, I'm not okay. And I have the vocabulary and experience and the agency, and I still have my times where I wasn't okay. So it was a lot of talking. It's a lot of trying to understand, because have you and I ever been through something like this? No. Has a lot of the people in the world have we been through something like this? No, it was about, let's grow and learn together. Like, what is this? How are you feeling? Like, it's a check-in all the time. And, especially the past couple of episodes with my guests, I said low-key grateful for this, past administration and the pandemic, because our people have been put in situations where we would have never known where they were landed on the spectrum. Like, are you the one that's like, you're the pandemic's over because you're over it? or are you like, no, I still care about others and I want to be safe. So it's like that whole, it's like, okay, if these things wouldn't have happened in succession like that, I would have never known. I would have been none the wiser, and I would have just kept rolling hard. And now it's like, oh, now I know. So yeah. I love hearing that, you did what you needed to do for you and you felt safe. And I'm sure in your gut was screaming like, no, I got to pull out. I got to pull out of this.
Well, I was grateful that, Asul and I were able to, as busy as he was, most of it was over text messages. I would communicate with him. I'd reach out to him and be like, yo, this is what it is. This is what we're doing. And as we got closer, I'm like, so he's like, yeah, man, like I had to switch the whole game up. And now everything is moved to the big stage. And there's really, everything's been slated. So, grand performances, the shows are promoted together. You know what I mean? You have your individual promotion as, each show comes upon the date, but, they slate shows. There's general promotion in the beginning. There's, huge flyers and posters and, it lists, people that are coming and the dates. And so, they have a specific way that they promote. It's not like a club, what I mean? It's a concert venue and a performance venue. And I was like, man. And so, my partner, Mateo Sonolia, who, we have like a little side project, Trinidad Sonolia, where we do like a little cool kind of like, lit house, deep house kind of vibe. And, we put out some music over the years. So we were going to do a performance together. And then I had, Jungle Fire, we're going to do a performance. And then Open Mike Eagle was going to close the show, but it was going to be like a super tight, intimate, like almost like acoustic vibe as like a triple, set, like a little sunset vibe. And so that was the initial idea. And also was like, yo, man, like the tumbleweed has grown and we have to shift it. Got to be big. I'm like, I can't do it. Because my partner was also like, I'm not comfortable. So we just had to I felt terrible. I don't like, as a promoter and a concert producer and curator over the years. I mean, I've done plenty of shows, put together plenty of shows and events. I do not like being the guy that's like, I can't do it. But thinking about everything, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not ready to be around 5,000 people. Yeah. And that's just a personal preference.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, I try to be outside. Like if I go eat or whatever. I mean, last night, since I've walked away from radio and, in that kind of like cooled off on like the whole DJ thing, I've done like 2 like private parties this year. One of them was last night. It was like a special event for the Fear of God brand. They're launching like a new loungewear series and they needed somebody to come out and play like strictly jazz vinyl. So my boy called me up and I'm like, yeah, of course. I love Jerry, the founder. I love what they're doing. I'm like, I'm all in. But what's the money look like? And then what is the setup like?
Please believe it. What's the safety precautions?
Because the other party I did was like outside. And I'm like, okay, cool. So last night was supposed to be outside, but I get there and the plans had shifted. So I had to be inside. So I was like, I mean, it was fine. It was a small enough group of people, but it was like, wow, it's like, it's crowded in here right now.
Yeah.
And look, I'm working on, evolving my consciousness. I'm working on like the deconstruction of my life. It's, negative patterns and cycles. I'm finalizing a divorce. I've also sort of, in a way, I don't want to call it a divorce because I think it frames it up in a negative way. But, I left KCRW, but that's also a lifelong relationship. That was a partnership, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it like, okay, I'm going through 2 divorces. I'm like raising these kids to be adults, taking care of my elderly, helping my elderly parents. I'm basically sort of in this weird space right now where I'm working on manifesting things that I want to come into my life. But the first part of that is becoming selfish with my time again, which is something that, as a spouse and a parent, I haven't experienced that in so long that I have to shake my brain up and be like, okay, you have to come up with a new routine that's it's almost like I have to be in a relationship with myself.
Please believe it.
You know?
Oh,
like,
for sure.
I got to date myself.
Yeah.
Got to take care of myself. And I haven't really done that. And like, you know, let me see. Yeah, like over 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't even think that way. Like every the way that I think, and you relate because you're a parent, and forgive me because you and I haven't talked in so long. Are you and Raka still rocking it? I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
He says hello, by the way.
Yeah, and please.
He's putting little man to sleep right now while I'm doing this.
Please give him a hug and a kiss for me because he's one of my favorites ever, and you guys together is like, you know, your inspiration. So you understand that because family, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But there comes a time where we have to like shed that identity of like, especially being a parent, you know, and get back to who we are as people, as a person, as a soul, you know, having an experience. So that's where I'm at. Like I'm reading some Eckhart Tolle right now, and I'm just like, I'm peeling back the layers. It's a very kind of deconstructive period of my life. And it's a trip.
I mean, I feel like anyone who's a parent understands it, but I think on a deeper level, being a creative, that's another layer. You know what I'm saying? It's like, while I'm in it, the past couple of years and even right now, it's like, what's my identity outside of being like, as a mom, I had to put stuff on hold in a different way than, you know, Raka had to. You know, it's just like, that's the dynamic of what was happening. And it's like finding that out. So I can't even imagine the deep work that you are doing. Just seeing like your Instagram and you're posting, like you're out in the desert or you're out at that one container place in the I know the company, I can't think of it right now, but you know, it's just like, oh, he's I didn't know exactly what you're going through, but I was like, he's in it. Like I could see it. Like I could see you were doing the work. I barely,
to be honest with you.
You're what?
I'm just starting. Like I barely started.
But I'm glad that you're there. I'm glad that you're there. You look amazing as always. And, you know, I don't know what the right words are. I am sorry to hear that, you know, you're going through these different transitions, but I'm sure that, you know, you guys are in a better place for it. And that, you know, I'm excited to see what happens with you in professionally and personally, you know, and I like the way you're talking, the way you're thinking. So I know you're just starting and you're deep in it, but as someone who's always been a fan of you as a person and what you do for the culture, what you've done, I'm excited for the new chapter. Like as soon as I saw that you were leaving, and I was like, I don't know the motivations, but I'm excited for whatever, like you're always going to land wherever you need to land. And I think, you know, you've always had like this, I don't know, like this deep grounded energy. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I feel like I think you're similar like Rocket. Like you don't say too much, but when you say it, it's profound and you're always thinking though. What's your sign? Are you a Gemini?
I'm a Pisces. I forgot my rock, but I think it has something to do with like my other signs because Pisces are, you know, move around and, you know, we're the dreamers and we're always dreaming up stuff and overthinking stuff and a million ideas floating through our head. And so I think that grounded energy is something that has to do with whatever, like, I had my, my chart done like last year but I like forgot everything. I have it written down somewhere. It has something to do with like the different energies. Right. Yeah. And I'm not deep off into astrology at all. Like
me neither.
And I actually believe in it. I believe that there's, you know, that science is crazy to me. You know, once I really started to understand like the signs and the planets, I'm like, whoa, this is like, wow, like personality type. Okay, this is like, okay, I can dig this, but I'm not like well studied, if you will.
Yeah, same.
You know, but I definitely appreciate it. And I'm learning a lot about myself as far as like being a Pisces and whatever my rising sign is and all that kind of stuff. And it just makes so much sense. And I appreciate that. And I feel like, Rock and I are like kindred spirits in that way. When I met him and I interviewed Dilated and we talked and everything. And I was just like, yeah, this is like, just one of those cats. Like we relate on that level without even really communicating too much,
Yeah. I think
yeah,
old
man.
souls. I think you guys are, I feel like I'm an old soul. Our son is like, you guys been here before before,
Yeah.
I think multiple times. And I think that's where that groundedness comes from. Like you're knowing you've been here before. It's like, you're not the first time at the rodeo or something like that.
I agree with that. I'm digging deeper into that. Like one of the things I'm going to do, like part of the work I want to do, I got a laundry list of stuff that I want to do. But like, I want to get into past life regression.
Yes.
So I think that could hold the key to like, not just past traumas of this life, but, prior lives that I think we hold on to as spirits. I was talking to, my lady about this recently. We'll dive into these things. And she's like almost 20 years younger than I am. And so we have these really interesting conversations because of like these different perspectives. Mm-hmm. Like we see certain things that have weight to them very differently, like time as a construct. We have totally different perspectives about time. But one of the things we were talking about was like suicide. Mm. And I saw there was a documentary series, it's probably still on Netflix. It's called Surviving Death. And it's like 6 episodes. And it opened me up to something that I had thought about, or think about every now and then, in that you can't necessarily free yourself by taking your life because you carry it with you into whatever your next experience is going to be. It's not a shortcut. And, I have an opinion about, suicide. I don't think that it's ever the right thing to do. If I saw somebody trying to commit suicide, I'd be like, let's not do that. You could live another day and we could figure this out. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of person I am. But then some people have a different perspective. Like, yo, you don't understand. You might not understand the level of pain that this person is dealing with and experiencing. But does that mean, it's like, okay, cool. Like, do you like, I'm not there yet. I haven't convinced myself that I would just be like, hands off. You got to do what you feel like you need to do. Cause I feel like you don't have that shortcut. Like that's not real. Like you don't free yourself that easily.
Yeah.
And I think that's just divine common sense. You know what I mean? Like you carry things with you. And so like past life regression, I feel like, okay, yeah, I want to dig into that because I feel like there might be some stuff that went on in prior lives or experiences or worlds that, outweigh some of the stuff that I went through as a kid. Like some of the stuff might be deeper than that,
Yeah. I mean, because you think about, I don't know if you've ever heard like epigenetics, like the trauma is literally within the cells. Like my grandmother, my abuelita, when she had the egg of my mom in her, it already transferred that, like scientifically backed. So like if it's within the cells, it's within the energy. If it's ancestral, generational, it for sure. Like it like I'm not hotep about stuff, but I believe like it's a mix. It's like a mix of like scientifically backed shit and a little bit of woo woo stuff. Like that's me. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't go too much into over here, but I feel it's a mix. So that makes sense to me. The past life thing. Totally.
It's funny because I spent some time when I was married, in the church. I grew up Catholic. Did you as well?
Yes. That's another level.
The Catholic childhood, right? I'm sure we have plenty of stories to share. I went to Catholic school in the whole 9. It was a trip. But, I got married and my ex was a staunch born again Christian. And so, wanting to be a good spouse. And, I did the deep dive and I took it upon myself to begin reading the Bible and attempting to decipher things. And immediately, I caught wind, and I wasn't doing a deep dive into metaphysics per se, but around that time, I'm a student of like, hip hop, but conscious hip hop I was paying attention to.
Yeah.
I'm listening to NWA, but I'm also listening to, Boogie Down Productions. I'm listening to KRS-One because he was studying metaphysics. He actually called himself, by the time he was in his late 20s, a metaphysician. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening to what he's talking about. And so when I was reading scriptures and stuff, I'm like, this is metaphysical. Like, this is all metaphysical stuff. And one of the scriptures I remember that points to what you're talking about in terms of the science of epigenetics is like, God says, I will visit the sins upon the third and fourth generation. And that points directly to that. And I'm like, well, that's what the Bible's talking about.
Yeah.
It's science. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's a trip. It's not like, this like religiosity that we can't figure out. It's like, oh, this is what that means.
Yeah.
Everything is decipherable. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, it's a trip. So I'm definitely going to do that work. I'm like looking into like fascia work because like you pointed out, it's in the cells. And so that trauma actually gets crystallized in your body, in your, the muscle tissue and the cartilage, and it just gets in there and hardens. So I want to I want to get all that out.
Yeah. There's an amazing book that my therapist a couple years ago, when I started going to a therapist again, recommended. And I recommend it all the time. I talk about it almost in every episode. It's called The Body Keeps a Score. And there's an even longer name. And it's by, I'll send you the link.
I've heard about the book. I haven't written it down. Send me a link, please.
Game changer. Do you know what I'm saying? That one and this other one, game changers, because I was like, oh, makes all the sense in the world. So let's start, like I always say on here, I have an amazing tribe of people, and this is a great way for me to reconnect. And then I get to learn things that I would, we'll say what's up at the event, at the party, at the club. You'll be spinning, so I can't really talk to you, or whatever. So I don't get to know these little, trinkets of goodness. So.
Hey man, like you and I are also kindred spirits. Like I remember when I first met you, I'm like, yo, this is my girl right here. I feel like this is my like my cousin. You know what I mean? Like It was like, I remember, I think, what was it? The first time we actually met face to face was at the radio station in the basement.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, at the old, because people listening, they have a new place now. But yeah, so I wrote that down. I was trying to remember how we met. Frank, I was working for Frank. I was interning with Frank. For the Unbound project, Frank Sosa. Frank Sosa, if you're listening to this, come on, man. Come on the show. I want to talk to you. I want to reconnect. And then I went there and I don't know. I felt the same way. I was just like, I feel like I know him. And then I tell everybody, I was like, oh, and then it was so dope because you were so awesome. You made me feel so welcome. I think when you announced that you were boning out when you were leaving, I remember I posted that. I was like, wow, he made me feel so welcome. I was new in the business, new in the scene, just moved up to LA. I lived by myself. So I was going to all these things by myself. And I was venturing into this music world and this hip hop world where everyone was like, be careful with the dudes, and this and that. And you were just one of those solid dudes. You made me feel welcome. And then you gave me the honor of like recording. I don't know if you used it, but it felt amazing just recording. Do you remember that? You were like, can you say Chocolate City in Spanish on the mic?
I used all them joints. As long as it was fresh, I have them on like cassette somewhere.
No way.
Yeah. In the shoebox.
Yeah, man, I felt the same way. So I'm happy to hear that you felt it too. I was just like, I know him.
Yeah.
Just good peeps, just quality peeps. Also, do you remember it was for Keeping in Time premiere?
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, hey, I wasn't known as Ritzy then. So you're like, hey, Marissa, da da da. You're like, I want you to, do you know Raka? Do you remember that? Yeah, so it was like the party for Keeping in Time, which is an amazing doc. I'll have a link for that for everybody. Mochila, B plus, Eric Coleman, the whole gang. It's amazing. It was the first one, and it was the party. So we were in I forgot what club it was at, and then you're like, hey, you're like, come here, I want to introduce you. Do you know Raka? But Raka and I were already dating, but I told him not to tell anybody. Oh. And so we pretended like we didn't know each other. We're like, oh, hi, nice to meet you.
I don't remember that, but that is so.
I love that story so much because I was just like, listen, I'm one of the only, few females in the scene here in LA, and I have to talk to DJs all around the world, like all around the country. I don't want people to think that I got a job because of you. I don't want people to think like it's tough out here.
Yeah.
Go listen to Mona Lisa's episode. Go listen to Rachel Ramos's episode, like rap game stories of a female in the rap game in the music biz. And so I was just like, don't say anything. He was like, probably like, what? Okay. And I was just like, don't say, I don't want anyone to know. So when you came here, like, here, I want to introduce you to Rock. I was like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And then we laughed about it later.
I love it.
So Garth, where are you born and raised? LA?
I was born in upstate New York because my parents were going to school back east. But they were both like, where's my mom born? They were both raised in LA. And they went away to school, had me. And they were young and wild, you know what I mean? So my mom left Pops back east and she came back to LA. And so she was working and I was like, staying with my grandma while she was at work and stuff. So those are some of my earliest memories. But yeah, I basically been in like, South LA and then spent my like junior high and high school years in the West Valley. But, kind of going back and forth because, my dad came back to LA when he was done with school. And so, I basically was in LA in the Valley, I was just kind of like my stomping ground was over the hill, back over the hill, So, yeah, I mean, I'm just a LA City kid, basically.
LA City kid. So because you can't think of LA music scene, you can't think of that certain era of, electronic and hip hop without thinking of you. What was your first memory of music? Was it like your parents listening to their stuff? Like, what was that for you?
Yeah. I have, like very sort of quiet, soft memories of like early childhood, like being a toddler and, hearing a piece of music that I probably couldn't identify for you unless I was hypnotized or something like that.
Yeah.
But, my parents, they were young. I mean, they had me in their early 20s. And so when I'm growing up in LA, these are parents who are like in their mid to late 20s and they're like partying all the time. Mm-hmm. And, when you have kids, and back then it was in the 70s, it was like house party central. You know what I mean? So they throwing house parties and getting lit. And, the kids is kind of like chilling in like the den or the upstairs or whatever. So we just letting them, they doing their thing downstairs and don't come downstairs. Like, unless, you know what I mean? So I was sort of raised on that like sound. And they were playing like all their dance music was like funk and R&B, you know what I mean? So I have memories of that. But one of my, probably the most powerful memory in terms of like an early music memory that like truly affected me. And I've told this story a couple times. We were up in the mountains somewhere. I want to say it was probably Big Bear. It could have been Mammoth. I don't know. But I remember it was cold and I had a jacket on and we were in the parking lot of some kind of like market. And it was either a Camaro, I think it was a Trans Am because I was into cars when I was little. And I think it was a Trans Am. Came in the parking lot, windows down, and all the way turned up was Genius of Love from Tom Tom Club. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was walking and we were either walking toward or from the market. And I stopped that song came out in like 81, 82. So I'm like 7, 8 years old at the time. And as soon as I heard it, it just, my brain, my body, my heart, everything was like, this is my world. Like this is something otherworldly. And I immediately was just like taken with that song. And it was like, wow, I was just blown away in that moment. So that's probably the most powerful, like early memory I had, because it literally stopped me in my tracks. It was, and still remains like one of my favorite songs. And I think one of the most phenomenal, just like productions, you know what I mean? Because I'd never heard anything like that before, you know, and it's set off so much that followed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that Tom Tom Club was heavily influenced by George Clinton.
For sure.
They referenced James Brown in the song, but I know they were listening to Roger, Zach, you know what I mean? Like, but they had this European slant, and they just did something different with, you know, the little vocalizations and the lyrics and the drop-ins and like the James Brown, like it was like, it was something that I like to describe as bewitching.
Yes,
you know?
It is. And so when you hear it today, present day, does it automatically take you back to that image you just painted for us? Do you want to support original content that supports diverse voices? Why not support Word to Your Mama? You're listening to it right now. Become a patron. Head over to patreon.com/WTYM. There are 4 patron levels to choose from, including Good Looking Out, I'm Down, Hell Yeah, and Please Believe It. Benefits include patron shout-outs, exclusive patron-only content, and so much more. Head on over to patreon.com/WTYM to take your support to the next level. Gracias. Ayuda a tus hijos y estudiantes a llegar más lejos. Aprende más sobre la beca nacional Hacer de McDonald's. Desde 1985, McDonald's ha otorgado más de $33 millones en becas. Gánate una beca de hasta $100,000. McDonald's está dando $500,000 en becas este año. Puedes ganar una de 30 becas. Hoy día, es importante seguir adelante y hacer más. A ayudar a estudiantes hispanos a hacer más que las generaciones anteriores. Hacer más de lo que se creen capaz. Hacer más de lo que pensaban que era posible. Por sí mismos, por su gente, por su cultura, por un mejor futuro. Para más información sobre la beca nacional Hacer de McDonald's, visita mcdonalds.com/hacer. Aprende más.
Hell yeah.
And it still holds up?
Every time.
That's amazing, because that's one of my favorites, one of my songs, and I remember hanging out at my cousin's in the summer, and we were next to the crack house, and we were having like summer outdoor parties and just doing things we shouldn't have been doing. But that song always takes me there. I was like, I don't know, 12 or something. Like, it had already been out, but like it was the first time I was able to experience it, like in like face to face, you know, in like an outdoor party setting in this situation. And it's always immediately takes me to that moment. And it's just like, it gets me like on a molecular level, and just like,
yeah, yeah, molecular, straight up.
Yeah, love that song. So one thing we've never talked about, and I didn't know, and I don't know how I didn't know this, you went to Otis.
Oh, I thought we talked about that. Okay, yeah.
No, you went to Otis College of Art and Design. That's where I wanted to go to school, but I couldn't afford it. I couldn't go. So let's talk about that shit.
I got lucky. I was able, through my parents, to get a bunch of loans, and I got a couple of grants.
Dope.
And I went I started in 95. I was able to skip foundation year, because I'd been doing like night school and whatnot at like art center and, other like art classes on the side, trying to like, get my portfolio developed enough to like, skip foundation year, because it was certainly a school that I was looking at going to. I also wanted to go to art center, but I felt like as much as I loved art center and what it was doing, there was a small voice inside of me that kept saying like, yeah, it's too corporate, and I'm not a big corporate cookie cutter kind of guy, but I took classes there. I loved the professors. I mean, the teachers that were professors, teachers that were there. I guess there were some professors, but the instructors that were there that I studied under. But when I saw Otis and I started to meet people from Otis, I'm like, you know what, this is more like my vibe. And then I ended up like getting into a cool living situation that wasn't too far from there. And, I couldn't really I felt like I couldn't move to Pasadena at the time, and I didn't want to commute every single day. Like it's just, So it just worked more in my favor to go to Otis. So I spent 3 years at Otis, graduated in 98. But my class was there during a very tumultuous time. There was a transient administration that was at Otis. And so the students in my class in particular we were like known as the troublemakers, because we were like, we're over here paying all this money and we don't feel like we're getting what we need to get in terms of like spending our time here. And I think in some of the teachers from the past and even some of the alumni have told me that because of like my classes antics, a lot of things were set in motion that helped Otis kind of become what it is now. We made such a fuss. Like we were always banging on the door of the administration, like, yo, we need to take a meeting with you because we're concerned about this and we need that. And we're not getting this. And we're sitting here and our teachers aren't showing up and we're calculating the money we're spending or we're going to pay back. And like, we're not getting what we need. You guys, even if you're not permanent here, you still got to take care of your students. And we were, at the time, I think the administration was more focused on like design. And we were like, my class was more focused on like illustration and like, I remember one of my friends was, trying to get into animation. And so it was more the illustration type thing that my class wanted to get into. And so we felt like we were being left behind. And so we were like, you guys got to step your game up. And so we didn't necessarily get to experience that while we were there, but we fought for it. So it was, it was still a good time. I mean, it was Otis. It was, being around a bunch of artists, philosophers all day, doing cool stuff. It was great,
So were you, because that's what you wanted to do, or was it music or both, or where were you headspace wise at that time?
I flirted with the idea of being a DJ, but all my life I've been a visual artist. That's what I did. I was known for that. I was the cool kid in school because I could draw. You remember that? Oh, he could draw. Like, draw me something. I was that kid. I was like the high school newspaper cartoonist, and I started like a little airbrush business.
I did not know any of this, Garth. This is amazing.
The Bell Biv DeVoe video that came out. Remember the Poison video when Michael Bivins had the overalls on with the airbrush graffiti?
Yeah.
So I was living in the Valley, and so that started to become a trend.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any like graffiti artists in the Valley.
Yeah.
That were doing airbrush work like that. Not really at the time when it started. So kids would take their like denim jackets and overalls to like the swap meet in the Valley.
Yeah.
But those guys were like heavy metal airbrush artists. So the kids would come back to school wearing these like weird graffitied up this gear. And I'm like, that ain't right. So I'm like, what, you guys I'll do it. Come to me. So I begged my parents. They went in, got me an airbrush. I commandeered the garage and I spent all weekend in the garage, like airbrushing people's stuff up. Like that's what I was doing.
Amazing.
In high school. It was fun. But yeah, so that was my thing. I wanted to get into, film production, like as a set artist and designer. I wanted to design, costumes and characters. Like I wanted to be one of the illustrators for like animation, film, but on the development side, like storyboard, like I wanted to get into that. But while I was at Otis, because I was a music lover and I was being immersed, having moved back to LA into the music scene, ultimately that won my heart. So even though I went through school and completed school, by the time I graduated from Otis, I had Chocolate City.
Oh, got it.
Because I got on the air in 96 and I had like a late night weekend shift. Matter of fact, for a minute, I had like Saturday and Sunday from midnight to 3 while I was in school. But by the time I graduated, like in 98, I was already on the air 5 nights a week.
No
so
wonder.
That kind of like really hindered my progress as a student at Otis. Like I didn't do my best work because all of a sudden I'm like eating up music.
Yeah.
And being out and meeting people. Like, so I was torn,
That makes sense because I didn't move up because I graduated from Long Beach. I didn't move up till it was like 90, maybe 99. And then I think 99 maybe was when I started doing the stuff and started, because I moved up to K-Town by myself. And that's when I was doing that stuff and I was interning at the Wake Up Show. And so like, you were like deep in. So I was like, oh, everyone's like, oh, Garth Trinidad, because I was in college. I wasn't paying attention to that. I was like, trying to survive. So I wasn't, so I wasn't really knowing, but like, I heard of you, I heard of the show. But when I got to it and I started like being in the scene, I was like, oh, they're like, he's been doing that for, so I just thought DJ, but creative. What I like to make sure people understand here is that the non-linear career path, but also creative is a creative, right? So, you could do it, of course, that makes sense. It's not like what you used to, I wasn't like what you're an illustrator. It was more like, I didn't know that was like part of your path too, because if you're creative, you're creative with that, whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter the medium. It doesn't matter the process. If you're a creative, you're a creative. Yeah. But that's amazing. Do you still do stuff?
That's one of my goals.
Yeah.
Like I was referring to goals. It as a creative, it takes discipline because you have to immerse yourself in that space. It really is like, almost like practicing a certain level of detachment from, the things that sort of distract us in the world. Get into a zone. I mean, every once in a while I've done over the years, over the last, since I got into radio and DJing and kind of left that visual space, done a couple of pieces of work, some paintings or whatever. I've actually posted a couple of things on my IG. But that it's a goal. It's a goal to just start to draw every day. And I haven't been able to do that. Like there was a spurt where a friend of mine and I started to like share pictures every day. We would like do a sketch and like text back and forth to try to keep each other accountable. She busy, I'm busy. So we did it for a little while. And then it was like, all right, we'll get back to it at some point. But ultimately it's like, that's part of what I'm referring to when I say I have to like recalibrate my whole way of thinking into creating a space for my creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I decided like I needed to get a divorce. Like my creativity, the creative spark, I could feel it. It was like going out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're going to be in a relationship, the relationship itself should serve the creative spark, not be a hindrance to it. And ultimately that's not about putting responsibility on the other person at all. This is about the self. It's about the know. It's about the awareness,
Yeah.
And I be aware.
Just earlier today, and I haven't finished the episode, I was listening to a podcast with Amy Sherald, the artist that did Michelle Obama, the famous, right? And she was talking about, she has an amazing story in general, and she doesn't really do these things. So it's awesome to hear her talk about her journey and stuff. But she was saying like she was not in any relationship. Like she feels that she wouldn't be where she's at today, finding her voice, finding her style, all these things to where she's at now. She didn't find it until she was like 30 something, 36 or something. And she doesn't feel she would have gotten to that space if she had been in relationships. Now she has a partner, the love of her life. And she's like, she made a joke. She's like, can we just like split up for like 2 months? Cause I got these deadlines. Because you want to be, I feel like I was in my best zone, you know, and I love the supernatural bear, you know, the son, my son, our son and stuff like that. I love him to death. And he's a mirror. As you know, these children are, these little humans are mirrors. And, you know, I'm a better person for it. But, you know, when I was able to just, you know, people don't understand whether it's music, if it's visual or anything, you're writing. A big part of the process is that like milling around, like, you know, the marinating stage, the, you know, where people on the outside looking in would be like, they're doing nothing. No. That's part of the process. And when you are stretched in so many directions, the essence of you, you know, is, you know, the parent, the partner, like, you know, I think that's why Rock and I work so well pre, you know, having our little humans, because we were that Venn diagram of like my own thing, his own thing. We only overlapped a little bit. So I felt like I could do whatever. 3:00 in the morning, the dead time. I was like my best creative thing, you know, all that stuff. And I could do all that. But then it shifts, right, when you become a parent. So I get it. And I feel like this is even more exciting because, you know, you're peeling the layers, you're doing these deep dives, Garth, and then you're going to start you have the space now, I feel like, you know, right? Like the bandwidth and the spiritual space to explore and find out what it's going to be. And it might not be pretty in the beginning, but it's going to be coming out and it's therapeutic. Like the zone. I miss getting in that zone, you know, where it's like, oh shit, it's been 6 hours. I didn't know, but I was able to be in that 6 hours because I didn't have to cook for nobody. I didn't have to do, you know what I mean? So I'm excited for you, Garth. I'm like super excited. Okay. So I want to talk about, I love music so much, of course. That's why, you know, I went to school for art, but I went into the music industry and then it shifted and I went to both things. But whenever there's a show I love TV as well. Whenever there's a show and it's, you know, the music's on point, I'm just like, who's the music immediately, who's the music supervisor? So I'm going to mention some names. You probably know them personally, but like on Euphoria in Atlanta, Jen Malone, crazy skills, white. Kyer Lehman does Insecure, amazing, white. Reservation Dogs, Tiffany Anders, amazing. Also, she's amazing because she responded to me. I was like, what is that track, that opening track? Have you seen Reservation Dogs yet?
No.
Ugh.
Yeah.
You're going to laugh and you're going to cry. And it's like, we've been needing something like this. It's one of my favorite shows that's come out. There's that one, I didn't know who it was. I knew it was Yasin Bey, but I was like, what is this mix? Is it a mix? And she was like, I go, what's that? The pilot, the intro track, and it's by Hallucination, with guest starring Yasin Bey, Narcy, and Black Bear. It's called Red. It is amazing. Tiffany Anders, white. So all my favorite shit, right? So you're a music supervisor, and I didn't know that you did music supervision for Entourage. How did that come about? And have you seen? I mean, these are people that are currently for these shows that I love, and they're white. Where are more people like you? Where are the people of color? What's happening here?
I appreciate that. I would say that I've done music supervision, but I stopped calling myself a music supervisor because I don't like doing music supervision.
Well, there it is.
I learned how to do it through, you know, a mentor of mine who's like one of the, you know, most successful, phenomenal music supervisors in the last, you know, 30 some odd years or whatever, 40 years. His name's G. Mark Roswell. People call him Gilly, but he's worked with the best. He's worked with the Denzels, and he's worked with like the biggest names all these years, and he does a great job. And he's white, But once I learned that like music supervision really it requires a certain temperament. It requires a lot of time. I respect any good music supervisor because I understand how much time it takes to get that song, to clear that song, to create that song, get it synced up. Like like I much prefer the role of being a consultant than a supervisor, look, I'm a creative and I have other creative stuff I want to do. And I know that being a music supervisor, not comparatively, I feel like music supervisors are like, in a way, they function almost like attorneys have to function, like the level of
CCC
grind. Like it's just a lot of work and a lot of attention to detail. So creatively speaking, you have to have a vision. You got to be able to communicate with the producers, with the director. You got to have relationships. Of course, you got to have that. It's almost like you're a mix of A&R, you're a mix of attorney, you're a mix of DJ. Like you got to have a knack for like, putting sonic to visual. You know what I mean? You have to feel it, not just see it, but you have to see it, hear it in a way that's like, you got to have a magic about you. Like, oh, this is going to work here. And then the attention to detail stuff is like, would this person be playing this in their car at this time?
Yeah.
Or if we walk into this bar or this club or this restaurant or this shop or this elevator, does this make sense? So it's a lot of detail. So do I like music supervising? Yes. But do I want to do it? Hell no. Like I learned early on that that's not my temperament. Like to do that it requires full-time attention.
Yeah.
That's just not what I want to be. So people call me up like, yo, you down to music supervise? I'm like, nope. I love it. But if you need a consultant, like holler at me. If you need me to put you together with some people, like let me know.
Yeah.
But like the Entourage story, it was Gary Calamar, who's I think he has a show. He left KCRW a few years ago. Just a killer ear for like good, pop music that's not mainstream, and he understands that there's like a connective tissue with like pop music from all around the world and all genres, from like going way back to the present. And I've always admired and appreciated Gary's ears. He was, he's one of the KCRW OGs, that really helped shape the sound of the station. And then he left, and I think he's over at KCSN. I think he's at CSUN's station, which I think is where Nick Harcourt is as well for the mornings.
Oh.
I think they're at CSUN. But don't quote me. all the left of the dial radio, man, it's still confusing. But I listen to all of them. Switch back and forth. Anyway, so Gary, who was a DJ at the time at the station, who's basically I consider a friend of mine, was approached by Lori Nimhauser, who was the line producer at Entourage. They were they were in their third season, moving into the fourth season, and they wanted to switch up the music. They had a small music supervision firm that was like really deep into like pop and mainly hip hop. Like that was their whole vibe. So that's kind of like what the viewers were getting for the first 3 seasons of Entourage, was like music that was going to help sell the show. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like hits. And then like, Doug Ellen, who was the creator of the show, he would want to have like a classic rock song for the end credits. So that was like the Entourage formula,
Yeah.
So third season they're coming out of. Lori's like, you know what? We need to spend less money on the music, and we want more interesting music. Mm-hmm. We want like something more realistic, something more underground, something more raw. Like, we need to have some supervisors come in that can really plug us into like independent bands and like indie rock and like classic funk and like 90s hip hop, like just mix it up.
Yeah.
So Gary's like, you let me holler at Garth.
Shooby-doo. Yeah. There you have it. That's the end of part 1 of Garth Trinidad. And we'll get into part 2 next week so he can finish telling his story of being a super music visor? What is that? Music supervisor for Entourage. So look for part 2 next week. And as always, we reap. Word to Your Mama is owned and produced by Ritzy P. Intro beat produced by Nico Beats. If you want to know more, you want to email us, you want to get the media kit, go head over to wordtoyourmama.com. Word to Your Mama is now part of the Latina Podcasters Network. And as always, Word to Your Mama is brought to you by ritzyperiwinkle.com.